Yeah,
Okay.
that's better.
I suppose this is part two of our podcast with Santino Roberts, aka DJ Methodz. That's right, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, right. We've had a bit of a chinwag about this, that, and the other, about what we do. You go out, you help young people to DJ. I suppose if the young people that you and I work with are really privileged, and I think it's only when you get a little bit older and you get some years under your belt that you start to realize what you've learned, what you can share, and the value of what you have that you can share. Yeah. If you had, let's try and talk to the people who we can't get to, because right now, me and you can't work with every young person. You're over doing the Hull area, I'm doing Doncaster. Let's hope that we can, and I'm determined to find a way that we can, and hopefully in future maybe that's something we could work out together. Me, you, and other people who we meet during these meetings, these podcasts. What three things would you want to give to that young person that you're working with, or what three things would you teach them about DJing, and what would be the most important?
I like the question. Let me think for a second then.
Oh, you should.
I think in the same way that music can be like the soundtrack to your life, I look at DJing as being this thread that can run through your life. You know, I look back to all of the different things I've done during the same times that I've been DJing, and it's like, it's this thing that it's there and it's never going to let me down. It's this in good times and bad. You can put your headphones on, mix tunes, and you know, it can be an escape from reality from a certain point of view if that's what you need, or it can be a direct extension of your reality, and that's kind of a bit more of how I look at it. You know, I believe that music is a form of expression that, you know, so if you can't write, if you can't sing, if you can't play a musical instrument, but you still have a need to express something. You know, I remember conversations like people telling me that's not real music. It hasn't got any words in it, you know, and I suppose my whole life is a reaction, particularly on a music level, to being told that's not right, that's not okay, that's not how it, you know, and it's my reaction is to say, well, actually, that's what I'm into. This is what makes sense to me. This is how I want to express myself. And it always comes back to people, you know, it's about what I want to stand for, you know. I got into the music I'm into because of the people it brought together. So, you know, overcoming racism in particular. So, yeah, when I work with young people, it's very much, it's not just about the music. Do you know what I mean? I'm looking at myself and them as people and how this can improve someone's life, you know.
Yeah. Yes,
I love talking about music theory and helping someone to understand technology, etc., better. But I think it's that fulfillment, I suppose, of a potential that might have gone unnoticed. I really believe in helping someone to understand themselves as people and understand their own potential and what they might be capable of, given a certain set of circumstances. Do you know what I mean? And yeah. It's for anyone, you know. I don't care whether you're young, old, black, white, able, disabled, whatever label you might have been pinned with, DJing can overcome all of that, you know, for me, and music in general. But, you know, so it's my way of doing things. Somebody once said to me, and this was an individual who I believe should know better. They came up with this comment that if the same DJ tutor teaches a range of young people, they'll all DJ the same way. And that to me is the biggest nonsense I've ever heard anyone express about being, you know, people being taught to DJ, because actually I think what I really try to do is make sure someone's own personality comes through what they're doing. You know, that's bigger than any tune they're playing. It's the way that someone does things is unique. And I always say to people, look, I'm going to show you the way I do it. And I'm not saying to you that this is how it's done. I'm saying this is how I do it. You will watch me, watch other DJs, think about what you're doing, learn what this technology is capable of. When you go to sleep tonight, think about, right, that tune that I like, how can I make that tune sound at its very best? You know, how can I mix it? What aspects of that tune should I be concentrating? You know, all these different ideas. And the way I teach takes time. You know, people have said, well, a lot of young people need instant gratification. And when I used to teach on turntables, that was harder, obviously, because there's so many basics that need to be learned before you can even start mixing.
Yeah.
And I understand that. But I always say to people, we're going to start slow, but by the time you get to grips with what I'm teaching you, you'll be able to mix a lot better 6 weeks from now than if I go in at the deep end, and then 6 weeks from now, you'll have all this information floating around your head, but you won't be able to do it as well as if you just take things in stages, kind of thing. And yeah, I really try to instill confidence and self-belief, you know, that someone might play music that I don't like. And it's like, well, that's not important. It's, if you like that, then you're going to get more out of doing something you enjoy than something that you only feel like you're doing it for somebody else or whatever. So I don't know if I've covered 3 things there, Simon, but that
yeah, do you know what you have covered? And you basically, what the research that I've done for 90-minute music over the last 3-4 years, you've covered quite a few of the things which you know, you talked about self-fulfillment, you talked about engagement. Really interested about what you've just said about teaching the basics in that kind of way, where you're saying to them, look, if you do it this way, it's going to really boost you when you get to this point.
Yeah.
I've literally been doing that with a young lad this week. I'll come back to that. But you talked about the people being important and that social group. And it, obviously from the first half of the podcast that we did earlier on, you were talking about you want those DJs to come in who really feel that group environment.
Yeah.
And because you get that added value there from that, from your people who are all there and they all love that music and you're sharing it. That resonates with me with some of the research I've just been looking at about a place called Charlotte in America. I think they had a rock band called Good Charlotte, and it were like there were a metal scene there, and basically these young people were being interviewed about how they felt about how they were, and they interviewed them when they were young kids. They were all like involved in like social service or something. That's how they got to interview them. So they asked them like about the feelings and stuff, and basically as time had gone on, they'd done this research over a number of years. And they had, the most important thing that they had was the music created a support system for their lives, a community for their lives. And that community, you know, I've been looking at things about suicide, and, you know, obviously suicide in men is huge. It's more people die from that than road accidents and anything.
Yeah.
So it's like, by getting people together around music, you can give them a support system for their life.
Yeah.
Now, there's a whole flip side to the coin of what you were talking about before, when you were talking about in the first half about the criminal justice system and the criminal justice bill, should I say, and
Yeah.
something that's just come out lately about, people can't protest anymore. You
Yeah.
can't get in, you can't gather in groups. Now that's obviously, I think George Orwell is probably the guy which most people have been talking about his book 1984 and his vision for the future. Well, it's, we're kind of living it, but
Yeah.
it's got this obtuse reality to what we actually need as human beings. We need
Yeah.
that social grouping. We need
Yeah.
that support system. We need somebody to talk to. You don't, especially as a man, you don't go to your mate and say, "Oh, I've got this problem or that problem," directly. You meet around a certain thing, and
Yeah.
music is an age-old thing of something we can meet around, and it's
Yeah.
only become something. Like, I always go back to this idea of like stars and like your Diana Rosses and your Michael Jacksons. When we were growing up, it was something to become.
Okay, but I think even on that level, there was already like an acceptance of that being how music should be. And I feel like we belong to a tribe that isn't accepted. If we're talking about the education system,
Yeah.
DJs, MCs, electronic music producers, it's just not, we're not catered for. We're not even thought about within the education system. And if you talk about human need, human behavior and connectivity, I've spoken to people recently who've talked about the way the human brain has developed over millions of years is based around thriving in a community of no more than 150 people. So this idea that it takes a village to raise a child. There were times when parents would die younger, living in tribes or whatever. And so somebody else would take on that mantle of raising a younger child or whatever. And so each relationship built within that is crucial. Now, if you take that idea, and this is how our brains have developed over millions of years, and then you throw a vulnerable child of 11 years old into a secondary school where there are 2,000-3,000 people, it's no wonder they go missing. It's no wonder they develop anxiety and stress. And, as adults, we're only just learning about the impacts of stress and other mental health issues. And yet we continue to create a society around us that doesn't work. The idea that people are, you've just talked about a 12-hour nursing shift. I mean, one of the most difficult jobs in the world, an undervalued profession still. And it's unbelievable when you put it in those terms. And yet we've got people who, even the money that a profession like that can offer, who can't, they're just surviving. They're not living. They work ridiculous hours, and human beings are not meant to do this. If you look at the way that traditional tribes live, you used to watch those programs, Bruce Parry, is it?
Bruce Parry, yeah.
Yeah. I studied anthropology as part of a human behavior qualification.
Oh.
And they talked about some of these tribes that live in like Papua New Guinea. They don't have a word for stress. They spend sort of 6 hours a day, family time, an hour here hunting, an hour here, there, making clothing, or developing, the place they live. But the primary time spent is with people, family, playing, and yet we've created this situation where parents are unable to spend time with their children because they're working all the time.
Yeah.
Children are then looking to sometimes the wrong influences for their, whoever they want to look up to. And it's just a mess. It's human beings, to me, when I look around, are generally speaking, struggling more and more with this system we've created. And yet, you know, you compare education systems, for example. If you look at school start ages in countries like Finland and the amounts of homework and things like that, we're ignoring successful structures like that, and we're borrowing ideas from education systems who've got problems, like USA.
Yeah.
And I don't know, to me it's staring you in the face, but nobody seems to want to change anything. The rates of mental health diagnosis amongst young people is so high that it's almost, when you read it, it's unbelievable. 1 in 4 women between the ages of 16 and 19 have got a diagnosable mental health condition. 1 in 4. I mean, what's going on? You know, I have a lot of conversations with young people because I love the whole reason I work with young people is that I love the way they see the world. I want to know what they think of it. Because when I was growing up, I used to look around me and think, like I said to you earlier, is this it? Is this as good as it gets? Is this going to be my daily experience? Like, there's got to be more to life than this. And I've had so many conversations in the last few years of young people who've said, well, I used to think about changing the world, but I've become so numb by everything around me that I just can't be bothered anymore. I just don't feel like anyone's listening. The people that hold the power are just not interested. You know, the working conditions, again, you know, my dad was a shop steward, union man, and he brought me up with a very strong sense of employers and employees' rights and stuff like that. And I'm very conscious of the way the world has been designed. You know, we went from a time when there was no school, and now it's the law to attend school. Your parents can go to prison if you don't attend school. Like, what's that system for? Is that really about improving a young person's life, or is that social control? We used to have workers living in accommodation that was owned by the employer. So if you lost your job, you lost your house. Coming from where you've grown up, the whole pit culture, I mean, look at the damage that's been done to families and generations of a way of life being torn away from people. And this continues to happen. I think some of the things I've watched on the news recently, it's not the same, but it reminds me of watching the miners' strike. When I watched those women trying to hold that vigil for that woman that was murdered by the police officer, and the police coming and dispersing that crowd, the way they manhandled women and put, you know, them on the floor, and a 6'2" guy pushing over a woman who's 5 feet tall, and it triggered those flashbacks to watching that stuff on the news and thinking, like, so these same police that have got a problem with that gathering, they didn't go to Ibrox, for example, when the Rangers fans were celebrating their title.
Oh no.
Success. And they didn't go to Buckingham Palace to stop people putting flowers down for Prince Philip. So this bill of affecting whether people can protest or not, you know, it's straight away, there's no equality there. There's no fairness. It's down to the individual decisions of whichever officers are at that scene. And it's a worrying time. You know, I think very much, you said the word protest and it triggered that in me, that for me, when drum and bass music first came about, it was a protest. Do you know what I mean? It was, I grew up with YTS and, you know, very little hope of the future, Thatcher's Britain. You know, the music was like, we're here and this is us kind of thing. And I think that something very similar will come along.
There's
the young people growing up today.
Isn't it? A vacuum is being created for that. And I think the coronavirus pandemic and the lockdowns have further created that vacuum for people to express themselves in any way that they can. And I think by what you started by that got you onto this, talking about the civil liberties, is the fact of, likes of me and you, could we go into a school and be respected for what we can bring to that situation? And does anybody really want us to do that, considering then all these young people will be more, will have better mental health? It's almost as if, like, do they want that to happen? Do they want to help people or not? Or is it just so far away from the people in power? Is it so far away from them that,
Well,
and obviously as age goes on as well. Now, for me personally, Santino, there's no way I would be working with young people unless I'd come through this incredibly difficult situation
yeah,
involving young people.
yeah.
It spurred me on. It told me that I needed to help them. I needed to help them because I'd seen how much upset and how much pain they potentially could be. Mental health, I had to do it. There was no way was somebody with the skills I'd attained not going to help. I had to. I felt it was like my vocation to help, and
Yeah.
I suppose it's where your motivations lie. And
I would argue that this motivation that we share shouldn't exist. It shouldn't need to exist. If the education system was meeting the needs of all children, but there's this one size fits all approach. So if you're not very good at English, maths and science, then you better be good at something else that the school delivers, or you're out. Until children are leaving school believing, like me, that maybe they're not creative, maybe they're not intelligent at all. School only teaches you so many things. And if your type of intelligence is not on that curriculum, you are going to develop the belief that you're stupid or unworthy. And then obviously all the mental health issues that come along with that.
That can grow as much as, like, when you go into a school or a youth center or anywhere where you're working, and you show people and they do that first mix, and then they get that reaction from, or they go and do a gig. Like, I know you told me that, is it Red Project, something you did in Hull?
Yeah.
Where you got these, you're working with these young people and you got them to do it and you got them to put their own night on. That will give them such a lift. But that starts as a grain of sand, which grows into.
Well, let me tell you that the conversation I had there was that I think about the guy with cerebral palsy who I've known since I was at college, and he is into metal music. He writes his own songs, but because of his physical impairment, obviously he struggles to play a guitar in the way that he would want. But when I taught him to DJ and he played 20 minutes of music at a proper nightclub environment, he told me it was the best thing he'd ever done in his life. Now, I debate that, obviously. I always do with people and say, nah, you must have had, other great moments. But there's something in that. And I think it's about the sharing. I think it's about the being involved in something that maybe you didn't think you could be. I was thinking, actually, on our break, what you'd said to me about challenging young people. And actually, the only way I can do that is if I challenge myself. Whatever I do in life, I want to become as good at that as I can possibly be. And so the whole service that I deliver is based on that if I only teach one aspect of DJing, or if I only use one type of equipment, then I'm doing the same as the education system, if you like. It's like the only way you can be a DJ is if you play on CDJs. Then no, that's not true, is it? And to me, everyone is different. Everyone's unique. And so my challenge, apart from delivering the music and the DJing, is to make myself somebody who, no matter who it is that I'm working with, we can communicate. And I don't just speak to each other. I mean, really communicate, really learn about each other as people. And like you said, I like that support network for life. What's more social than a dance floor? What's more social than listening to music together? Bringing people together who we had this conversation last time, didn't we? If you grow up in two different parts of the city and you believe that going to a different school or a different youth centre, that's going to be trouble because of where you grew up.
Yeah.
And it still exists so much today. In fact, it might be even stronger today than it was when I was growing up, because you've got a lot more sort of gang violence and stuff. I remember the sort of exact time where, when I was at school, the idea that you'd have a 2-on-1 fight was unheard of. If someone had a fight, it didn't matter if one guy was with all of his mates and the other guy was on his own, it would be 1-on-1.
Yeah.
And then now, I hear it all the time. Someone's been jumped by 6, 10, 12 people. It's like, well, when did that start to happen? You know? So yeah, I think young people are growing up in fear, maybe more likely to stick to their own area and whatever. And yeah, that's not a way for human beings to develop, is it? You know, if you think about how much you learn from traveling and meeting different types of people. So yeah, that's one of the things I try to do really is with each person that I work with, try and get them to come somewhere else as well and mix, you know, get them into buildings that they wouldn't have gotten into before. You know, we talked about the music centre in Hull. As a 12, 13-year-old, I would have looked at that place and thought, I'll never be going in there, you know? So yeah, challenge is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, it's how you visualize yourself and what you think you can be. You never know, and until you've travelled, you don't really. You know, and I mean, like my lad he's just come back from school, he'll be watching. He'll be probably sat watching a YouTube video now of somebody with a load of money in a different part of the world, and he might be dreaming of doing that one day, but until you actually go there and you see what things are all about. I mean, and I suppose over the course of time, you have as many good experiences and bad experiences. So you kind of know, really, the good experiences hopefully will outweigh the bad ones.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully. And not always, though, because it's like if you're on a path and you're telling yourself that you're no good at something or you can't do anything, your ego and everything in your world just becomes smaller. Whereas once you start gaining confidence, then your world becomes a world of, yes, I'm going to try that. Yes, I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
I'm not scared of failing as much as I were before.
You know what? Yeah, that's it as well, isn't it? Is this that's one of the other cultures that I think has been created in through the education system in particular, this idea that if you fail, your life's done. If you don't get your GCSEs, wow, you're in trouble. And then the COVID situation, we've suddenly got this situation where they're not going to be able to do the GCSEs. So those teachers that have put that message into young people's minds that without these GCSEs, their life's going to be a problem, what are they telling them now?
Well, they've lost any integrity that they thought they had before. But I suppose if that's the case, where does the integrity come from? There's always that thing of in a school environment, there's always somebody to answer to further up. And then there's another tier further up. There's lots of warehouses around here where, and I've worked in them. I worked in them when I was doing my degree. And it's the same. They have a team leader who wears an orange jacket where we always used to wear a yellow jacket. And like there were some people in there who were like, "Ooh, I think I'm going to be a team leader one day." And like I used to think to myself, right, well, I don't want to be a team leader, but if I did, I wouldn't want to behave like this one because he's not particularly nice. It seems to be a bit of a bully. And then you think, what's driving them to do that? Is it for the extra 35 pence an hour that they're on?
Well, yeah. I mean, what you're saying is triggering a similar idea with me, because it really, I suppose, it comes to self-respect, confidence, self-esteem, all these things, you know, and transferring that confidence to say, yes, I'll try something else. So many young people I work with, just the starting point is little self-respect. I think back to when I worked in pubs. I was offered an assistant manager's job, and at that time, it was like, I mean, the money was terrible, but it seemed like a lot to me. You know, I was thinking it'll be enough for me to buy records, etc. I'll do that job. And on the first day, my manager said, I'm going to introduce you to the area manager. And so, all right, whatever. He says, so what he'll do is he'll come up to you and he'll say, do you know who I am? I said, right. He said, and what will you say? I'll say, no. Do you know who I am? And he went, you can't talk to him like that. But he's just spoken to me like that. So like if he introduces himself, then I'll just shake his hand and I said, but don't, you know what I mean? If someone comes and gives it the big I am in front of me, I ain't going to talk up to someone. Like you want me to treat customers with respect, but my own area manager won't treat me with respect. I said, I can't work in those conditions. And he says, oh, and wear a tie, because this guy judges people by their tie. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'm done. I said, this ain't going to get off the ground at all. I said, ask somebody else to do this job. And it's that. It's, you know, the thing my dad instilled in me of people in powerful positions should exist for the benefit of the people who work for them, not the other way around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And people who earn money from other people's sweat, I can't. So to me, yeah, it's about instilling that individual drive and courage and belief that someone can be whatever they choose to be, and they can find a way to create the life they want.
You know what? This is what I think you've nailed it. You've nailed it with what you've just said, and what me and you are both trying to do is, obviously we've talked before, and we're very passionate about helping young people and actually giving them an identity for the mental health. We're not giving them an identity so they can have so they can go and specifically go out and protest something that the government's doing, or bring down the government, or start a new political party. No, it's not about that. But no. Is it the fear factor of that, which is not giving people like me and you the green light to go and say, let's help people create an identity for themselves, get fulfillment, have self-confidence, because once we give them self-confidence using a compressor or a mixing desk or whatever it is that we're teaching them, then they could go on and be a telecommunications expert. They could go on and be somebody who goes and fits Sky in, put satellite dishes on the side of people's houses and make sure that works. There might be people who go and do gigs and do the rigging and do the lighting.
Yeah. But this is the thing. I meet so many young people who, I think what's happening is that they're generally speaking being told at school or at home that they're not that good, that they're actually bad. A kid I'm working with at the moment told me he attends a behaviour school. I said, all right, so there's something wrong with your behaviour then? Yeah, it's bad. I said, well, do you think of yourself as bad? And he looked at his feet in shame and nodded. And it was like, Jesus. Anyway, a few weeks later, after teaching him to DJ for a while, he's got ability, do you know what I mean? No question about it. And but I didn't tell him anything at first. I was just making sure he was learning. And then he stood back one day, having done a mix, and he went, I'm good at that. But he didn't believe it. He was sort of doing it, like just being a bit brash, do you know what I mean? And I turned to him and I went, you are. And he looked at me like nobody had ever said that to him before. And it was like, I said to him, do you remember 3 weeks ago, you're looking at your shoes, not looking me in the eye and telling me you were bad? And today you're looking at me with a massive smile on your face because you've realised you're good. And he was just like, huh? Could see his whole body like lift, all the body language, the way it's like, interesting. And also young people who can do stuff outside of school that maybe those teachers that are telling them they're not that good couldn't do themselves. I've got a guy at the moment. He's like an example of what's going on with young people and technology and self-esteem. He's friends with, and I mean friends, not just talks to people, DJs and producers from all over the world. He's set up groups on Facebook where all these people share ideas, etc. He's 15 and he's talking to people that run record labels and promote nights and about how, you know, and he can't talk to the kid who sits next to him.
Yeah.
It's like, so you set all this stuff up online. He produces his own tunes. I'm teaching him to DJ. He can do all this stuff, but he can't cope with just chatting to the kid next to him. And it's, wow, you know what? Social.
Yeah. So it's just, you know what? It's multifaceted, isn't it? It's so multifaceted. The things and the things which you and I, you know, we clearly know because we've researched it, we've lived it, we've done it. No teacher's going to be motivated to go and find that out. You know, me and you will discuss the book that I sent you the link to. You know, I gave you the title of about using music technology in education, where people had actually done a critique of it. To, you know, is this stuff any good? How is it any good? When is it usable? Who is it usable with? How should it be? You know, because they've researched it and done it themselves. When there's this gathering amount of research, which is going up, I was talking to people at an interview for the Music Hub, for the chair of the Music Hub. We were talking about music hubs, weren't we?
Yeah, so that's right. You were going for the interview the next day, yeah.
Yeah, I went for the chair job. I didn't get it, but they were really, really great people, and talked to them about some of my ideas about, you know, how I visualize the future. And they said, well, that's not really what we're looking for, which were fair enough. But I said, in the time I were at college, I looked at my tutors. One of the guys that used to teach me were nearly in his 70s, and he passed away last year. He was teaching me things, and he could tell me things which nobody could tell me. He worked with Neil Sedaka. He worked for Radio Sheffield for a number of years. And his perspective, the things he could tell me, nobody could tell me because they'd not done them years and had that experience. So I said, right, I've had people who had up to 500 years of experience educating me. So that tells me, even though I walked out of there with a degree, you know, we're a piece of paper as far as I was concerned. But when I thought about it, what I'm doing now comes from that 500 years of experience that they already had. And the thing is, it's not necessarily academic people. Like you say, it's your granddad and his dog and things we were talking about in the first half. It's those things. Santino, listen, I've neaten it to the toilet, mate. I've been drinking loads of water. Just give me 2 minutes. Is that all right?
No problem.
I don't even know how to pause video. So anybody who's listening so far, just
can you flush the chain?
Oh, right, I'm back. Sorry about that. And if anybody's listening out there, thank you for being patient. I'm
Well,
getting like,
anyone who listens to it's probably going to have the same needs, aren't they? So every time you or I have a toilet break, they can take one.
yeah. It just reminds me of my dad though. When as a kid, when my dad used to go to the toilet, I used to think, oh God, he's going to be in there hours. Just seemed like a camel, my dad. And then you think, ah, it's finished now, and then you hear it stop, and then you hear like, all right, it's starting again. Carries on trickling for another 30 seconds. Yeah,
that's a conversation I didn't think we'd have today.
Well, you know, kind of what I'm thinking of is this, because my dad were an engineer, and do you know when the boat got stuck in the Suez Canal?
All right.
Weeks ago, did you hear about it? The massive container ship.
Yeah.
Well, before that, I think it was the late in the 60s. There were the Suez crisis, where I think the armed forces had took over the Suez Canal, weren't letting anybody through. Said, look, you're gonna have to give us more money or something. I don't know details because I can't remember. It's a while since I've read about it. But my dad was there. He was stuck on a ship because that's what he did before. He worked in the engine room on a ship.
My dad used to work on the Suez Canal as well.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a coincidence, isn't it?
Yeah, he used to work on dredges.
Wow.
Yeah. How bizarre is that?
They might have been there at the same time.
Okay, so let's think. My dad was born in 1937, so yeah, he might have been.
My dad was born in 32.
Right. So yeah, I think he was there late 50s, early 60s. Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe they were there at the same time. And
actually, yeah, it would be because my brother was born in 1960. So my dad lived in Cyprus and then used to travel to Suez to work, and he lived in Beirut as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So yeah, pretty similar time.
It's but both well travelled, and it's funny how. Do you know what? I lost my dad when I was 17. I was quite a young lad, and I just think to myself, if I told my dad that I wanted to work in the music industry, he literally, I just can't see him having any entertaining the thought of that happening. And I think that must be another thing that young people, I mean, even if they wanted to do it, I think a lot of the young, like the grime artists and stuff, they're really great at doing videos. They get dancers in there. They do videos off the top of their head. There's a guy called Chipmunk, and he did this video. And it was a lad who came into the pub while I was DJing and showed me this video where somebody else had been bad-mouthing him. So what he did was he wrote this song. This song was called Dickhead, right? And he's basically saying how this guy is a dickhead because he's dissing him and saying that he's no good because he's kicking it with Chris Brown and all this. He did a tune with Chris Brown a few years ago. And, basically a little bit of jealousy, I think. So he did this track where he pulls up to his petrol station, gets out, starts doing song, live, dancing. It's just a normal petrol station, probably 3 o'clock in the morning, nobody there. And it was just immense. And I think young people must see this stuff and think, I can do that. I've got a video. I've got skills. They might do a bit of emceeing. I can do that. But where do they start? How does he do video? Because he hasn't done that. That's been produced by somebody who's got a foresight and pre-production to do it. You got to, if you ever done a video yourself, you need to do your storyboards. There's things that you need to do to make that come off that good.
No, I learned earlier that wasn't something for me. I think it's one of those specialisms, isn't it, in its own right, to produce something of a quality level. The work that goes into it is huge.
Well, it's like with the music, with the production, there's a huge foresight which needs to come. There's things that you do if you're building a track that you kind of need a couple of years and quite a few years of knowledge. I'd say I went into it for about 5 years before I did anything that I was remotely happy with. And right. I don't try and put these massive expectations to young people. I don't tell them it's an easy ride. I tell them that it will be fun. If you do this, it'll be fun. You'll enjoy it. And
no, that's a really good message, isn't it? It's obviously trying to reduce any pressure or expectations is a good thing, but at the same time, not sugarcoating it. But the one message I do say to people is don't give up, never stop. That's the if you want success in anything, whatever that success looks like, just don't stop doing it. There'll be people out there with more talent, more skill, more flair, but what they might be lacking is persistence.
Yeah. Long
game. Most of the people who were DJing when I first started, I don't know where the majority of them are now. They professed to me an absolute love for music, DJing and drum and bass music, and now I don't know where they are. You know what I mean? And I think if you really love something, if you really want to be good at something, then that's what you do, isn't it? Long term. And
you've nailed it there. It's what you do. And I think everybody has that thing in them. It might not be DJing. I don't think. And for me, I nearly missed the boat with DJing. I fell into it by a complete accident. I don't know if I told you about the riot.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
If that had not happened, I wouldn't have started. I wouldn't have bumped into this guy who introduced me to his dad. And he was like a 70s DJ. He used to come out in the, they were called Mark Anthony, his DJ name. He used to come out in like the Roman gear with like a white robe on and a crown of, not a crown of thorns, but like them, like a wreath on his head.
Yeah.
But he was so good at working the crowd. And one of the things that he said to me were, when I first did my first job, he says, try and make sure that they like you.
Yeah.
And he says, from there, everything should come.
Yeah.
But he did send me out to some, I bet you've had some sticky situations like this. He sent me to one job one night. There's a pit village in Doncaster, which if I had to, I wouldn't, if you're a stranger in a pit village, it can be a very lonely place because of the community that's there. Because they all know each other and they're all familiar with each other. And what's this outsider doing here?
Yeah.
You can feel like one. Anyway, they'd booked a DJ through Mark's agency. Oh, I don't want to put his name out there because, oh yeah, Mark Anthony. That were his false name. It weren't his real name. So they'd done it through Mark's agency, and me and him were doing a Northern Soul night on other side of Doncaster, at Phone Rings. And I'm just there to learn a little bit about soul music and maybe do an hour for him or something like that. He says, right, you need to get yourself to Edlington and you need to get yourself down there now. Well, thing were, I played football for the team in Edlington, so I were representing them. I played for them every Saturday, and oh, what, this is going to be completely embarrassing for me. And I got there at 10 o'clock at night. Went through this sea of people. I bet there were 400 people in this room. In fact, thinking about it, I bet there were more. I bet there were 5 or 6. I go through this room, there's a sea of people, and I'm like barging through people. I'm whacking them with speakers and stuff as I'm bringing up PA and through them all. And then I've got to get onto the stage, so I'm climbing onto the stage with this stuff, and it was quite a nice stage. And luckily, there were a couple of young lasses who were from like my area, and they said, "Oh, Flinny, what are you doing? Come on, get vibes on and all this lot." And I'm thinking, right. I says, right, just bear with me and all that. I says, you're going to dance on that? Because I'm thinking, God, please dance when I put first tune on, or I'm dead. So like, he says, yeah, have you got Venga Boys? It weren't Venga Boys were out. There were a song called Up and Down. It was quite a up and down. It was like just a dance beat. I put it on, they got up, and literally everybody got up, and there weren't a riot. But they didn't want me to go on then, because for next hour, and I think I did an hour and a half in end, and in end, the owners of the club were coming up, the secretary and that was saying, look, mate, you've got to go home now. You've got to go home. We need to go. We need to get these people out of here. And you get that as well, don't you? If you're doing all right,
yeah,
they want to get you out, and people, and you want to go because you want to go home because you've done your bit, and leave them wanting more. But there's that. It's just tell me a little bit of a story about something that's happened to you when you've been out DJ. I know you say you've been to Poland and that. Give me an anecdote, anything that you remember where you either think, wow, that were a lucky escape, or wow.
To me, it's all just about funny stories, And again, it's all about people. And stuff that you could not predict would happen. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not sure I should tell this story on here, but
yeah, we'll give it a parental warning, right? If there's young children listening to this, just turn it off now out of respect for us, because we know me and Santino, we both work with young people, but we're not codgers, but we're not young either, are we? So
I guess this is a story for anyone who's like 14, 15 upwards.
Okay, we'll give then.
So we went to play in Poland as a crew, and it was an absolutely incredible weekend. It was the first time we'd gone to play there, and we were treated like royalty. Being English drum and bass DJs, we were seen as like, you know, cream of the crop, origins of the music, etc., etc. We were on the local news, on the TV. We were given accommodation owned by the third best skateboarder in Polish history. His house was built by the DC Shoe Co. Middle of nowhere in the countryside. Beautiful house. I couldn't even tell you how many bedrooms, probably about 6.
Wow.
Massive house. But the front of the house was just like a big wooden veranda overlooking some woods, and we just partied. Do you know what I mean? Like, everything that we wanted was there for us. I've probably never been treated better by my own family, you know. We had a big barbecue, and when it all started to die down, there was one of the guys that came with us. He's renowned for falling asleep. Everywhere we go, he falls asleep. And so, you know, we used to do the usual stuff, like if he fall asleep, we'd draw something on his face, or get a giant packet of straws and put them all in his hands, so when he woke up, the straws are, you know, just daft stuff that you do when you're a kid. And on this particular occasion, the barbecue had died down, but there was one big black sausage left on the barbecue and loads of gherkins. And we all kind of looked at each other as he fell asleep, looked at the sausage. It's like, right, he's having some of that. So we took this black sausage down his jeans and filled all his pockets full of gherkins. And then he was asleep on a wooden bench. So we picked up the bench and we carried it out into the woods. And he woke up and then he fell asleep again. So it was like, oh, carry on. So then we put him out in the woods and then we just forgot about him. Anyway, we then fell asleep ourselves. And then the guys, like the Polish guys, came down and went, where's the bench? It's like, no, we've taken it out into the woods. What have you done that for? Oh, well, this guy fell asleep on it, so he's on the bench. Oh, anyway, and then we said, oh yeah, we've took this black sausage down his jeans, and they said, you can't do that. So, what do you mean we can't do that? We do this kind of stuff to him all the time. No, those woods are full of wild bears and pigs. If they smell this sausage, he's a target. Anyway, so we went back out and we filmed it, and he woke up just as we walked up to him, and he sort of realised that all wasn't quite right, and he puts his hand down his jeans and he pulls this big black sausage out. And obviously we got all this, you know, filmed on our phones. Anyway, it didn't stop there. We got on the plane, and he's still a bit worse for wear. I mean, you know, we got on the plane still pretty hammered from the night before. And he puts his hands in his pockets and he pulls out all his gherkins and he's like, what's going on? Like, anyway, he went home, he washed those jeans, ready for his job interview the next day. We put so many gherkins in his jeans that the wash didn't get them all out and stuff. So he's still pulling gherkins out during his job interview. It's just like, and that to me, it's those stories that live forever. Do you know what I mean? There's never a time when that story gets bored. You know?
Yeah, it starts wonderful. That
it
is. I just those things. It's like it brings you together in a way. I mean, we used to do silly things like that, you know, when we were young lads. You know, one of the lads that we know, he falls asleep all the time, and he lost his hair at quite a young age. And when he was receding, I mean, I'm receding a little bit now, but when he was receding, he looked like Peter Cushing. You know, the horror. He used to be in all horror films, Peter Cushing.
Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah.
But when he fell asleep, he always used to do this with his hands. Like,
Oh, right. Nosferatu.
yeah, like you were dead. And he could literally sleep anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. The saddest thing that ever happened to me was that I once fell asleep right next to him in the middle of a club. Because we'd been out all the night before and stuff, so I'd gone out that night for a drink, having not had any sleep, and he fell asleep, and everyone's laughing. And then next 10 minutes, someone woke me up and went, "Look at you two." But yeah, he fell asleep in the toilets in the club we played at, got locked in, got woken up by the cleaners the next morning, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I suppose one of the other stories that sticks out for me is. I used to live with a mate of mine. I mean, it was just, we had to stop because we just used to DJ constantly. Like the house was never clean. You know what I mean? We just had mates around DJing all the time. The music would be so loud. We never used to hear the complaints of the neighbours. You know, didn't mean to, but looking back, I wouldn't want to have lived next to us. But we got in the taxi one night. Our front door used to just be a latch lock, you know, so when you shut it, you couldn't open it without the key, kind of thing. It's and my mate had left the keys in the house, so I said, "We better get them now." He was like, "Nah, it'll be all right. We'll just break in when we come back." I said, "Mate, like, we're going out all weekend. When we come back, we're going to be shattered. Do you know what I mean? We don't want to be breaking into our own house on Sunday. It'll be fine. I've done it before." I said, "Well, that's nice to know," because we had like our back gate shut closed with a big fridge against it. Oh no, washing machine. Thinking that's what's going to stop people from getting in the back garden. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, then we completely forgot about that. Obviously, came back on the Sunday. Only as the taxi pulled up did we go, we ain't got the keys, have we? So now we've got to go through this process of breaking into our own house. Now, what was troubling was that nobody thought to ring the police. And the sequence of events that took place, to this day, I think it might be the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. So we walked into our back garden and the washing machine just fell over. You know, it was like this crime deterrent that we'd put in place just made no impression whatsoever. And then to break in, we had to kind of climb on the toilet roof, and you could reach into the bedroom window and kind of flick it open from there. So two of my mates jump on the toilet roof, and one's trying to reach over to get his hand on the window ledge to swing across. And by this point, I'm already laughing, and they're going, "Are you going to help? Are you going to help?" I'm like, "I can't. I'm in stitches." I mean, watching these two fools just try and. I said, "You'd be rubbish criminals." Do you know what I mean? What are you? And as my mate grabbed onto this window ledge, his tiptoes were just touching the edge of this toilet roof. So it was like within seconds, if he was going to lose his balance and fall like 10 feet. Do you know what I mean? So my other mate, the only option he had to push him up to this window, he sort of, in one moment, looked at his ankles and thought, well, I had strong enough to pick him up by his ankles. And then he tried to like think about pushing him on the back. And it was like, that's not going to be enough. And the only way he could move him was by grabbing his ass and pushing him across. So, by this time, I'm in tears, and they're like shouting at me, "Help, help!" I said, I can't. I'm just, you two are destroying me. Anyway, my mate scrambles into the window, and as he falls through this top window, he's got massive feet. His feet got caught in the window, and he ends up hanging upside down in the window, face forward. And I turned to the other, I was like, can this get any funnier? And as I said it, his t-shirt fell forward, so all he had in his window was his belly. And I'm like, there's neighbours out mowing lawns, whatever. Nobody looked like. So then he's hanging there for ages, and he says, "My ankle, I think my ankle's going to break." And then he falls through this window. And then nothing. It was like, hang on a minute. Has he broke his neck or something? Do you know what I mean? Like, and nothing until for about 10, 15 minutes. Eventually he came and opened the door, and it was like, what a ridiculous scenario. Do you know what I mean? All caused by the priority being DJing instead of thinking about bringing the dorky, you know.
Oh, it's quality.
Yeah.
Right, listen, I'm gonna have to get going. It's been
Yeah,
lovely
same to be
talking to you
fair.
again. I think we should get his heads together a little bit further down the line and just see what we're up to. And I've got a couple of irons in fire in my mind and how I generally work. I don't think it's generally a great way of working, but it seems to work for me. I kind of put something into the barbecue of my mind, and then somehow it comes out baked. So that's kind of what's happened with 90-minute music. I started with this bad situation, asked myself how I could make it better. The answer was helping other people, and now I'm not going to be satisfied until I can help lots of people. So that's I think we can get our heads together, bring all our experience together, and see how we can do that and help each other. Anything that you need from me, you can always ask.
No, I
And
think there's a lot of value in working with like-minded people, and I think from when I first set up on my own, as I say, I'm a really self-reliant individual, but the ideas that I'm starting to have are ideas I can't necessarily deliver on my own. Do you know what I mean? And I'm on this kind of mission to take DJ tuition to a level where it's respected alongside more traditional forms of music tuition. And to do that takes ideas, takes approaching things in a maybe a slightly different way or whatever, and working with people who have different ideas. And what I'm, it's a shame maybe you didn't get that job with the music hub there, but it's that type of thing of changing the minds of people who've worked a certain way before, getting what we do into certain buildings, getting access to people who wouldn't normally have that shot. And it feels to me actually like it's getting easier. The more people I get to know, the more people who see what I do, it's taking less and less to convince them of its value. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Having said that, I applied for some funding this week, and it's through mental health and innovative ways to meet those needs. And the guy who was dealing with the application has written back to me and said he doesn't understand how DJing can help with mental health. Will I explain? And look at the conversation we've just had. It's,
to be fair, it is the things that we've just been talking about. It highlights it, but I always like to look back at there's things which we can empirically know by what we've done, and the work that we've done with young people specifically, but also not to ignore the research which other people have done, which the academics have done, and that comes down to the sociability, building that social network for resilience, and self-confidence, those small achievements, building those, being open to it is something which we can build on. And as funny as you were talking about the music hub, I didn't get the job for the music hub, but I have managed to organize a conversation with the guy who runs the music hub, and I'm going to be talking to him on Monday, and maybe, possibly, depending what comes of that conversation, we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, you've made an impression.
Yeah. Well, I just told him what he said. Where he says it's clear to see your passion, and it's also that thing of, if you're working with musicians all the time, there's a certain kind of character which can look at those staves and look at those crotchets and minims and those pieces of paper and say, right, I can turn this into sound. Now that might be their environment. It might be a mentor which tells them that they can do it. It might be that they can afford the instrument. There's things which are there which lead them there, which is why I want to do these series of little podcasts.
Yeah.
Because once we have the information coming from, like, you, a professional DJ today, which is a lot of that's what's in me and my scenario. I've already interviewed Mark Ellis, who's a professional musician. I totally got his story wrong, how I thought it were in my mind. So I want other people to be able to look at this and say, right, Simon's done a podcast. Hopefully he's getting better at his interviewing technique, because you know, it's something that you can always get better at. But really, we can show them the nuts and bolts of what's going on. And when we've collated a few of these together, my strong feeling after talking to you and after talking to Mark Ellis is that there's going to be more things that we agree on, and more things that bring us together, and more things that show extra value outside of the music, outside of the curriculum, outside of education, that lead into health and education being linked, mental health being linked to music in a way which is being ignored because nobody does quite understand it yet. But because we're making the effort, and because we've got the hunger to find out where that is and where it's coming from, we'll find it. You said the word persistence. We wouldn't be still professional DJs if we weren't persistent.
Yeah.
Those professional musicians would not be professional musicians if they were persistent. So I'm hoping to bring together what we all share and find out what more there is that we share.
Yeah.
And if there's things that make us different, outlining them so we can use what makes us different to make us better at what we already do.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with everything you've just said. Happy to be involved in that kind of thinking, without a doubt. We're well, I don't know. I think of us as a rare breed, but I don't know. Maybe that's not how it is. Maybe it's just been a lack of awareness of each other, a lack of communication. Who knows? And it's good, isn't it, to have these conversations? And I was just thinking about your conversation there with the Music Hub. You know, you've planted a seed, and on that day, the person you've spoken to might not have thought you were exactly what they were looking for. But then all it takes is for them to go away and have a conversation with somebody else they work with who goes, do you know what we could use? Oh, right. I know a guy who does that.
Yeah.
Boom, isn't it? You know, it's relationships, connections.
And my vision is what I said to the Music Hub, where my vision would be to bring musicians and music producers together and DJs and create something bigger than what they have on their own. Now, the logistics of that, and, you know, finding the cost of that versus what the output is the critical thing. But that's why talking to people will give us an insight into that answer and if it can be done. But I know that every music hub in the UK, they get an amount of money to do jobs. They go out into schools. They work with young people doing music. But they're searching for a best practice so they can show that to other areas, so they can take it and increase things better. So it's like, whereas years ago when I started DJing, everybody wanted my job. And my thing was like, God, don't show them any tricks. Don't tell them what tunes you've got. Don't tell them anything that you're going to do. Just do it and do it in a way that they're never going to be able to copy it. Yeah. It's kind of like, because I've got the experience under my belt now, and obviously you have, that there's no fear factor there. I can't take anything from you. You're who you are, and you've got all your skills, which are very similar to the skills which I have. And it's kind of like, all we've got now, we're not worried about people. Now we're not worried about people taking from us. We're in a position where we can give. Yeah. And I'm up for that. I'm up for just giving anything that I know, anything that I can share. And obviously the fulfillment thing, where does that come into it? I'd like a bit of credit for the research that I've done, which has took, you know, some of it's boring. You've got to needle through it and find out, did they really do this research properly, or are they just trying to make themselves sound good? Because you do get a lot of that. Yeah. So all I'd want is appreciation for being nerdy enough to do that. Aside of that, I'm happy. Do you know what I mean? I don't think anybody's going to stop me from DJing if I want to DJ. I've just took on a little bit of work with the local recording studio in Doncaster. Just because I wanted to work with them. They wanted me to work with them. I wanted to work with them. And I want to try and add value to what they do as well. You know, it's not, they're paying me, but there's no monetary value in that work. It
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
for me, is I'm going to help people in an environment where they can be helped and I can help them. So
yeah.
that's it. And I know that's something what, you know, you mentioned to me before, you know, about your work fostering and stuff. You probably don't even consider that as a job now, but you know, it's something that you do.
How can I put it? Is it a job? For me, there's some people who, and looked after children included in that, but there are some people who are just, people make assumptions about certain groups of people without any knowledge whatsoever. For example, oh, you know, looked after children have got everything they need because there's so much funding there. So if they wanted to learn to DJ, for example, they could do that whenever they want, you know. All these, you know, any different groups really. And it's like, I try to put myself in the shoes of an individual and think, well, if that was me, if I was growing up in that situation and I wanted to become a DJ, how would I do it? And there's so many young people who they probably just wouldn't know where to start. Do you know what I mean? And so that's why I've placed a lot of value on going to where people are. Excuse me, Matt, there's somebody at my door. Can you give me 1 second?
All right, yeah.
It's always good when loads of records turn up, isn't it?
Oh, is that what you got?
Yeah, yeah. More than I expected as well. It's good. Yeah, you're going to people where they are, especially if they're poorly or, you know, unable to travel or whatever. You know, this particularly, I mean, this is happening around Doncaster where people maybe who live out in some of those villages at a certain age, they might not even be allowed to travel. So, yeah.
Yeah, certainly now as well. And the a couple of lads what got me, I don't think they got me into the drum and bass, but when I started my national diploma, I met a couple of lads and they lived in like an outlying village. Have you ever heard of the Haxey Hood?
No.
It's like a thing. It's like a medieval football match, but they take.
Right.
I don't if anybody from Doncaster is going to be listening to this at the moment, but they might be able to correct me. They take an animal's. Let's just say it's a sack.
Right.
Yeah. These two villagers, they start in the middle of the two villages and they fight over this sack. And it's like an old day job where they all get drunk and fight over this sack. It's a bit like that cheese rolling thing they're doing.
That's how football was invented, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, kicking ball up, you know, up and down village. But it's just this hood, and it's about this legend about this fair maiden who somebody from this village gave her this hood, or I don't know what it were. I don't know details of it. But there were these two lads from this village, Axie, middle of nowhere, and they were always talking about, oh yeah, we always we go to. I said, what do you do? How do you get to these drum and bass nights and stuff? Oh, they're in Sheffield. We don't even go to Doncaster because there was nothing in Doncaster at that time.
Yeah.
We go to Sheffield, and it's like when I used to get my records, that's where I used to go.
Right.
Because that's where I could get records. The record shop in Doncaster just never got the stuff.
Yeah.
And then years later, a mate of mine, Carl Taylor, he were quite a well-respected DJ. I don't know his DJ name, but he was quite well-respected. And I met him one day and he was to give me this story about he had some records produced, and he got on phone to this guy who was selling his records. And he says he would actually waxed them and got them printed, got them done, everything labelled up. Oh, how many have I sold this month? Oh no, you haven't really sold much this month, Carl. You know, this, that, and other. And Carl's thinking, hold on, apparently there used to be a magazine called Jockey Slot.
All right.
Read of that?
Yeah.
It apparently had a big spread in there about him and what jobs he were doing and where he was working and that. He says, "Oh, you know, like I've had this little interview with this magazine and that. Sure, you still haven't sold any of my records. Nobody's bought any." No, mate, no, it's really slow at the minute. Anyway, he went down to this place in Camden, and he got there, and basically went, right, I want my records. I'm taking them back. I'll sell them myself.
Yeah.
Oh no, we ain't got them. We ain't got them. No, I want them. I want them now. You've got them. You printed them, and all other records were piled up there. And he's thinking, what's going on here?
Yeah, yeah.
So we got back to this place, and all Carl's records were piled up. This distributor who'd made them, who was supposed to be distributing them around London, he'd not even distributed the records, so people couldn't buy them because they didn't know they existed.
Right.
So like, I mean, I suppose I'm getting onto something else here about, you know, distribution, but he had no way, he had no control of what he were doing, even though he'd earned the respect through producing these records.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think he does it anymore. Last conversation I had with him were about 10 years ago, something like that, and he was talking about moving dots around the screen. He says, I'm not doing it anymore. He says, like, moving dots around the screen. He says, that's not a job. And I suppose what he was saying is actually sitting, producing music by himself, become less of a social thing.
Yeah.
And the social need is there, which we've both discussed already. So if that need is there and it's so important, let's celebrate it.
That's a good place for us to leave this conversation, to be fair. That's what I've heard young people asking for is a space to not just learn how to do this stuff, but to just do it. Like a youth club for DJs or for whatever. Do you know what I mean? And I was pointing out that nearly all of my projects have got these outcomes. I've got to tick all these boxes. I've got to show that I've taught someone so much in a certain space of time. And it's like, well, what happens after they've done that? Like, they're ready to play in a club, but there's no opportunities. So isn't there somewhere they can just come and do it and enjoy it and share it? And so that might be something that comes through.
Yeah, that's something which I certainly visualized in what me concept were in the start, making it a movement. So you know, me and you will become old fellas or older fellas one day. We want to be able to leave something behind which is stronger and bigger than what we have. Then we're fulfilled. Then, you know, we've done as big DJing gigs. We've done all the things where you've got the air standing up on back of your neck, and you've got that incredible thing for you. Our next stage in fulfillment is a challenge, but that's something we can do. And I think what's good as well, if we keep in touch, which I'm sure we're going to do.
I think so, yeah, no doubt.
You know, you're in Hull, I'm in Doncaster, and before I'll say we, because I think we can, before we take off at Rest at World, Yorkshire's a big place, and there's plenty of work to do in Yorkshire. And that might mean me, you linking up with other DJs, but showing them a philosophy that we've proven. Do you know what I mean? So when we go to these music clubs and we go to places and these environments, they were saying, look, we're DJs, and they're thinking, well, how does that involve us and what we do? We'll be able to show them. Yeah. This is an event that we've put on, let's say in Hull. We put this event on in Hull. These three lads here are from an SEN group. Yeah. These three girls are from the Muslims, and they don't often get a chance to do this kind of thing through the faith or the cultural divisions. You can bring those things together and celebrate in a way that community groups, funders, and etc. like to hear and want to hear more of. Plus, it cements what we do, because it would be a bigger challenge to do that. I think it's completely doable, and I think you know that it is.
Yeah. Just got to convince the people who can open that door for us that we can do it best for them. And yeah.
So, listen, great talking to you again. I'm going to go, and thanks so much for letting me record it on the podcast.
Not a problem.
So it'll be on my webpage, which is 90minutemusic.co.uk. And anybody listening out there who's still listening, thank you so much for listening to us, because we've gone on for a bit, but it's because we like talking to each other and we know what we're on about. I think that's the core.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it.
Right, lovely speaking to you, and I think there's something with the Isla Foundation in a couple of days.
Yeah, I can't make that meeting. I'm working, unfortunately. But yeah, we'll catch up again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Okie
Cool.
dokie. I'm going to go and get some dinner now. Enjoy yours.
You too. Take it easy.
All right. See you later.
Bye, mate.